dear ones. You're listening to the What God Is Not podcast with Father Michael O'Loughlin and Sister Natalia.
Glory to Jesus Christ, sister.
I knew you were going to do that. Glory to him forever. I knew you were going to do that, and you waited right until I was about to say it.
I did, because I was actually giving you a chance to jump in.
I'm supposed to wait until it says recording for 3 seconds until I say it. So that's why I was waiting. 5 seconds? I don't know.
I'm making stuff up now. So I jumped in on Sister's prayer beforehand, and so I decided to jump in on her podcast too, just to rub it in, just to go that extra mile to annoy you, Sister.
Aw, you don't even have to go the extra mile.
Are we having tech issues already? We just had a 15-minute long conversation, had no tech issues, and now you're all blurry.
Well, welcome to my monastery's internet. We're working on a solution to this, though, so hopefully it's going to get better. I don't know.
Yeah, you have a, quote, bad network.
I know.
Anyway, how are you doing?
Well, now it's very bad. I'm okay. I have a migraine right now. I'm going to preface with that because I don't know what's going to happen in this episode, but Jesus will show up.
Jesus is what's going to happen.
Yeah, Jesus is going to happen. I wanted to give a shout out to someone, and then I also had something that I wanted to share that's kind of mushy. But the shout out that I wanted to give is to Elizabeth and Tyler, who I had sent them a book that they had asked for some resources, and I had an extra book that I thought they might want, Christ Our Pascha, the Ukrainian Catholic Catechism. So anyways, I sent this to them, and as a thank you, they sent me 2 bags of coffee from their favorite roastery. And roastery? Yes.
Why not?
And
I think that's true, actually. I think it's called a roastery.
I think it is. Do you remember the debate we had about coffee, of whether it's an invention or a discovery? Mm-hmm. We had a bet on this for years and years and years. You don't even remember which side you took. That's what you're trying to remember right now.
I think you're correct, because I can actually see it both ways. Listeners, I think we already talked about this on podcast too, actually, like a while ago. But yeah, is coffee an invention or a discovery? I think we already talked about that. But yeah, I could see it either way.
Yeah, well, I can see it my way.
Both and paradox.
Anyways, they sent me 2 bags of coffee, for which I thank you. All of the coffee drinkers at the monastery, thank you. The non-coffee drinkers also thank you, because they have to live with us if we don't have coffee. But they also sent a bag of liquid IV, and it's strawberry flavored, which I've never had, so I'm very excited to try that. And also, all of those things, plus the cost of shipping the package, was surely more than the book I sent them. So it was very generous. So
by the way, you've shared, mentioning liquid IV, you've shared that you have POTS, but is there a form of POTS? I watched this video where this girl literally faints like 20 times a day.
Yeah, so there's varying degrees. So this was Mother Eliana also has POTS, right? She would stand up in the morning. She'd get up from bed and black out.
So in this video, this girl is literally just sitting down, and all of a sudden she like faints. Mm-hmm. And everybody in her life knows it, so they just catch her. But she'll be out for like a minute and a half.
Did you just Google POTS to see what you found about it?
No. I was watching a random video. It's just social media works that way.
A random video on POTS?
If you watch one video, then it just starts playing another video because it wants to get you hooked on social media. But how did it
know that you're interested in POTS?
it
POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
I don't think either it listens into me, or it just, it shows all kinds of random stuff. It's not
interesting.
It's not all singularly stuff. It's just, I think it's just other videos that get a lot of hits.
Well, anyways, there are different kinds of POTS. There's a kind where you have low blood volume. There's kind where you have your blood pools. And so there are different kinds. Mine is very well controlled, especially by exercise and by drinking liquid IV.
Nice.
So,
see how much our listeners love you.
I know. Okay, so that's the other thing that I wanted to share, which is the mushy part. This is the mushiest banter. There was surely never mushy banter on Catholic stuff, you should know.
No, there wasn't.
But this is why there's a woman on this podcast now. So I used to be very uncomfortable with the mushy, as you know, and as Father Travis knows. And before I entered the monastery, if something mushy came up, I would just say, I just threw up in my mouth a little, and then I would move on with life. But now I'm like all about the mush. So I just wanted to share with all of our listeners and with you, Father Michael, a grace that I was sharing with Mother Theodora and with some of the other nuns recently, but specifically with Mother in our one-on-one, was that the podcast has been for me a very surprising gift, in that it's been very much an experience that I didn't expect of spiritual motherhood. And like, I can't articulate it, but I really feel a motherhood for our listeners. And it's one of my great joys in like responding to the emails we get, like that's typically, as of right now, that's typically me, is responding to the emails, and just the way that people have opened their hearts to us, particularly with prayer intentions, is just very beautiful. And I'm so moved by that. And so I wanted to thank everyone for giving me that opportunity for motherhood, especially as most of our listeners know that right now, because of COVID, my life profession has been delayed. And the life profession for an Eastern nun is when she receives the title mother, symbolic of her spiritual motherhood. And so in the pain of waiting for that, God has given me through the podcast this gift of motherhood before I'm even given that title. And so I'm just really grateful for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's probably not like the kind of banter you had on Catholic stuff.
You'd be surprised.
Oh.
Goebel got mushy sometimes.
Aww.
I don't think he meant to, but he'd also make my mushy really awkward sometimes too. I'd have to be like, Goebel, like, don't make this weird. I remember saying that a few times, because like I'd be looking at him across the table and I would say something. By the way, Catholic Stuff You Should Know is the podcast I was on before getting moved to Los Angeles, for those of you who don't know it. So I was on with 3 Roman Catholic priests, and we'd alternate. But one of the priests, like,
just a bunch of bros,
because we're also like, yeah, it's also like sometimes people compare our fraternity to a fraternity. And they compare our brotherhood to a college fraternity. And so it was like I'd be saying something, and then either an inside joke, or I would say something, I could see it triggered something in Goebel's face, and he'd like try not to laugh. Then I'd try not to laugh. Then he'd try not to laugh, and then he'd start laughing, but like we'll wave the mic. Then I'd start laughing, moving away from the mic, and it was just one of those things where if that got pretty bad sometimes. But
whereas
most of the time,
on our podcast, you just try to make me laugh.
Yeah. It's a different dynamic, because on Catholic Stuff I was the new guy. I was the one that stepped in. I didn't want to really mess with what they had going on, but I think because Goebel and I had that, Nepal and Goebel would just like yell at each other, but Goebel and I would like laugh at each other with inside jokes and stuff like that. And then Rapp and I were more like me and you, where you just say it. If it's in your head, you just say it. So yeah.
If it's in your head, you just say it. I had a friend visiting recently, and this was Father Steve. I don't think he would mind if I said that. Father Steve was here recently, and he was talking about the podcast, and because he listens sometimes, and he was like, "You guys don't need to keep apologizing for your distractions." He said, "You don't have to apologize for the squirrels, because that's what the podcast is. It's just a podcast of distractions." And you say good things in there too, but it's not really like a podcast of topics with distractions. It's just a podcast of distractions. And I was like, yeah, well, he was like, just own it. That's what you are. I'm like, well, okay.
I think Beth and Olivia, intern Olivia, if you're listening, I really do think we should put just the phrase "not for everyone" at the end of our description.
In every episode.
Well, no. Just like the description of the podcast on social media. Like in other words, like if you go to Facebook and it says, "Hey, this is What God Is Not podcast," a Byzantine Catholic priest and a nun, talk about their life and about their Byzantine Catholicism and love of Jesus, and it's not for everyone.
Not for everyone. This is true. Yeah, that is true. If you're emailing us to say that we're not like this other podcast that you like and we need to be more like them, we are not that podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before I introduce our topic?
Jump in.
Are you sure? Because I don't really know what our topic is.
I thought you were going to do like a Poustinik thing.
I am. I'm going to do a Poustinik thing. Okay. I'm sorry if I guess I haven't really processed. This is one of the externally processing ones. But it's good stuff.
It'll be fine.
You have such a calming presence for me, Father Michael. Okay. So I wanted to talk about humility. That's what this podcast is. So
you
I
totally
guess
should have me guess, because
what?
that was what I was going to guess.
Really?
From your prayer.
I didn't pray about humility.
You did. I wish we had it recorded. You'd owe me a beer. Yeah.
Oh.
You talked about obedience and humility. You mentioned humility more than once, which to me went, ding,
you're right.
Humility.
Oh, man. I need to stop praying for the things that I actually want to help for, because it gives away what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Okay. I can hear the children.
Can you hear Father Nathan's girls?
Which is just completely
They're just like yelling.
I love it so much. Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk about this one, so I wasn't planning on doing another word from a Poustinik so shortly after the last one, so I apologize to any listeners who don't necessarily like that particular line of episodes. Huh?
Everybody loves it. Go ahead.
Okay. But then I went on this poustinia, and it was so good that I wanted to share it. So, and I've shared briefly with you, Father Michael, in direction, like in kind of a vague way, and there were no cries of heresy or whatever. And so I'm going to share it on the podcast now in a more specific way. But a few episodes ago, when we talked about the prayer of St. Ephrem, we did the first part in which we talked about humility. And in that episode, I'm talking about how we have to have the humility to be willing to be misunderstood, and how this is like one of the hardest kinds of humility. And wait,
to wish or to accept?
I don't know what I said.
What did you say earlier?
I think I said to be willing.
Oh, willing,
to be
yes.
misunderstood.
Amen.
The humility to be willing to be misunderstood.
Yes.
That's a very weird way to say that. We need to be humble enough to accept being misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay. I might have said weird words because migraine. So I might have said wish. That's not what I meant. Although some of the fathers would even say that. Climacus would definitely say that.
The crazy ones. But no, go ahead.
Father Michael. We'll edit that out. Oh, no, we won't. Okay, so I'm talking about the humility of being misunderstood and how it's one of the hardest kinds of humility, and it's one that I see in myself so much. I mean, I see the lack of humility in myself so much in that. I have to have the last word. I have to. The example I gave on that episode was like, if I mess up while I'm cantering in the chapel, I even have to later say that I knew that I messed up, because I can't let it be thought that I didn't even know that I messed up. Like, that's how not humble I am.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about this on the episode. I'm very convicted. I walk over to the monastery. I have a conversation with the nuns about something that you and I talked about on the podcast. And I feel very misunderstood. And I'm like irate. And it was just this immediate failure after I'm just, and I share this because I don't want people to think that, I don't think anyone could listen to our podcast and think that you and I are put together, but I don't want people to somehow think that because I'm a nun and because you're a priest that we're like all put together, and that I'm preaching all of these things and that I do them perfectly, because I do none of them perfectly, actually. And so anyways, and then after this happens, I'm now very frustrated with myself because I'm like, I just talked about this on the podcast. Literally, podcast, came back across the street, misunderstood. nothing in between. And how do I fall back into this pride so quickly and so easily? And so then I move on, and I'm like, I do a couple kind of small things to try to repair. I, in fact, have a conversation with one of the nuns by whom I felt misunderstood, because there had been kind of a lot of moments recently where I'd felt misunderstood by her and she felt misunderstood by me and whatever. And so I just had a conversation where I said, like, look, I feel like there's some kind of tension, and I just wanted to know if I've done something to hurt you, because if so, I want to apologize for it. Which was really good, and it was really fruitful, and it turned out there was nothing. We both thought the other was thinking whatever, right? You know, this happens all the time, and we move on with life. And then our relationship is great again. And then I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'm rocking at the humility now, because I went to ask if I did something wrong, and now I'm humble and everything's good now. And then right before going into Poustinia, I do this, like, I'll just be very vague, but like great act of love for the community, right? And I'm very joyful in doing it. It feels very selfless. I really feel like I'm giving myself for the community. I don't feel like I need anything in return. I'm very happy to do this. And then one sister looks at me in like kind of a weird way, and I feel totally I'm being totally serious. I'm being totally serious, Father
It's
Michael.
just the way you said that. She looked at me kind of in a slightly weird way, and it ruined everything.
That's my point. That's my point. That's how unstable I am. I am a crazy person. And then it's like, it's all shot, right? And I'm like, nobody's even thanking me for this. And why did I do any of this? And no one appreciates me. And I'm just the best, and they're all the worst. And then like, and it's just a horrible, horrible spiral. And then I'm angry, and I'm like angry that I gave myself in this way, because I could have done 100 other things in this day. And it really, like, when you say these things out loud, it's completely ridiculous. I'm obviously exaggerating the points, but I'm only exaggerating the points. All of the points are there. But then I'm so angry, and I so regret giving of myself because I felt not received and misunderstood, that I'm then like venting to someone about how angry I am, and someone within the community. And they didn't like feed into it or anything like that, you know? So it wasn't on them. But then after I do this, I'm in this horrible downward spiral of like, wow, I just really vented, and that was wrong, and I'm the worst. And so I went from I'm the best to I'm the worst. And and then I go to this person and I apologize for venting, and I'm like, and they forgive me, and that's fine. And then I go to Poustinia. And so I'm going to be on Poustinia for about 48 hours. And that first night, so it's pretty late at night at this point. And that first night, I'm just miserable. I'm like, I am a horrible person, and I thought I gave myself out of love and selflessly, and clearly that wasn't the case, because then why was I so angry at the end of the day? And you know, I think that's very complicated, because actually I genuinely think I did give myself out of love that day. And there was so much joy there, and I really was. And then the devil just got in, and he distorted and he twisted, but that didn't actually nullify everything I'd done in the day. But that's what I was telling myself. And so I was just really miserable on this Poustinia the first night. And then I go to bed, and the next morning, I'm sitting in the icon corner, and I'm praying, and I'm looking at the icon of Jesus, and I'm just like, Jesus, I'm sorry. That's all I have. I'm sorry. And I'm realizing that, in fact, even to accept that I messed this up, to accept my own anger, to apologize to Jesus for that. I took it to confession, all of that. To accept that and move on, that in and of itself requires humility, because that requires me to continue to be misunderstood by my community who I had hurt. Because I apologized, and that's fine, but who knows what they're still thinking even after I've apologized, right? But I'm not going to go back to it. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not going to tell them again, like, to try to convince them what it was, like, what my reasoning was here and why I was acted this way and whatever. Like, actually, that's a lack of humility, or it can be, depending on how it's done. And so anyways, I'm praying, I apologize to the Lord, and I really feel a great peace, and I'm resting in this, and I'm looking at the icon of him, and then my eyes are just starting to get tired, so I close my eyes. And when I close my eyes, all of my anger from the day before comes back. And but not it's not that my anger came back. I didn't phrase that correctly. The memory of my anger came back. So it's not like I was feeling angry again. It was that I was remembering my anger, and I was ashamed of my anger all over again. And then I start remembering lots of sins from years and years ago, not about anger, but about other things. And so, like, just a flood of all this past sins from years ago to yesterday. And so my eyes fly open, and I look at the icon again, and it's just gone. and now I'm focused on Christ again. And so I was like, Jesus, what am I supposed to do? How do I move on from these things? How do I get away from the shame? How do the unholy shame? How do I stay focused on you? And his response was, never close your eyes again. And I was like, that's ridiculous. So I wrote a poem. That was kind of a back and forth between Jesus and me. And that's what I wanted to share on this episode. So
beautiful.
My word from a Poustinik is this poem. And I'm going to have to break it up sometimes, because you're obviously not seeing the poem, so you're not seeing when you or me is capitalized, so you don't know who's speaking. So I'm going to break it up every once in a while to just say, this is where Jesus starts speaking, or this is where I'm speaking, or whatever. And the disclaimer is that I don't know how to write poetry, so I'm not following any poetic rules here. I don't know about rhythm and things like that. It's just totally made up, which is probably how poetry is nowadays. But
right now you're trying to keep people from misunderstanding you, and you're wanting them
Father
to realize
Michael,
that.
I know. You're right. Listen, anyone...
The only reason I know is because I do that all the time. That's why I'm saying it.
You're
But I
totally
can
right.
tell you're doing
totally
it.
right.
You're trying to keep the listeners from misunderstanding, because if they think you know poetry and you're not following the rules of poetry, then they might think that you're...
Thank you for pointing this out.
I do it. I'm bringing you humility, but I'm also saying
grateful.
it because I do it. Disclaimers are my thing. You know that.
I'm grateful. Oh, I am like the world's most prefacing prefacer ever, as you know, from every direction. I'm like, it takes me like 20 minutes to get into a podcast episode because I have to give all the prefaces. I literally preface my prefaces. I'm giving a talk on Sunday, and I know I'm going to do that. I've already thought out the preface in my head. No, I think it's important, though. I'm glad you point that out, that's what I was doing, because first of all, you're right. But also, this is the thing about humility. I've been praying so much recently, and I know I've said this recently, but I've been praying so much recently about humility and obedience. And I know so many ways that I'm prideful, so many. And we talk about them a lot in Direction. But there are a lot of things that are more subtle that I don't recognize as a lack of humility. Like exactly what you just pointed out. As soon as
those
you said
ones are
it.
the dangerous ones.
Right. Yeah.
Because the devil works in those ones. The other ones, what we know, what I say, Lord, let me see my own sins in the prayer of St. Ephraim.
Absolutely.
Like the ones we know are we can bring to light. The ones we don't, we don't.
So I'm glad you say that, because I do want people to realize that humility is not simply how we always think of it on these grand scales of pride, but there are very subtle forms of lack of humility that we need to grow in awareness of. Why are you smiling? I'm not doing it right now. I'm not over
No. I'm not. I'm literally thinking the opposite. I'm just thinking how well you handle that. Like how many people in my life could I call them out like that and they would have smiled and said, "Sorry, my bad. I did it." Like I wouldn't do that. Like it's just,
Yes,
it's very rare.
It's probably only because I'm doing an episode on
of,
humility.
It shows a sign of great humility. It really does. And that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you these opportunities for.
Thank you. I said thank you. I don't know what else you want from me. I'm going to share the poem.
Read the poem. Thank you.
Thank you. I read. Oh, praise the Lord! I have it right here, and I had forgotten I have it right here. I don't. It's in the Philokalia. It's something. Saint Mark the Ascetic said something about humility that was very poignant. I don't know how to say that word. I regret using that word on the podcast. Poignant. Is that right?
I think that's it. Yeah.
I think that's it. But he says something about humility is not. Oh man, what is it? He says something about like humility is not a thinking less of ourselves. It's a fullness of the realization of the mercy of God, or. I don't remember what it is. I'll have to look it up later, but it's very beautiful. Okay, so the poem is called No Sleep for My Eyes. Oh, the context you have to know is that my dad's name is David. You have to know that because I mentioned something here in reference to David, the psalmist, as referencing my dad's name. So
nice.
So shout out to my dad. Okay, no sleep for my eyes. In the silent lull of prayer, I felt my eyelids droop. Yet with closed eyes, I still could see scenes played out behind my lids. Each picture is a dart returned, each familiar face of the people I've consumed, not only years ago, but memories as fresh as yesterday. The shame was overwhelming, and not a holy sort. So my eyes flew open, refocused on your face. Peace, in God alone, is my soul at rest. But I know at some point, my lids will drop again. Lord, what do I do? Your answer was simple. Never again close your eyes. My bewilderment echoed that of Nicodemus. How can a man never close his eyes? Can he prop his eyelids open? Smiling, you gave me words of a holy man, namesake of my Father. I will give no sleep to my eyes, nor slumber to my eyelids. And I shall not set before my eyes whatever is base. The command of the Lord is clear. It gives light to the eyes. Give light to my eyes, Lord. What is your command? How do I train my eyes to be always on you? And this is where he starts speaking. Love your neighbor, and you will see me. When you want to close your eyes because you feel unseen, see the fear behind their blindness and see my eyes seeing you. When you want to close your eyes because you're misunderstood, see the pain barring perception and see me misunderstood on the cross. When you want to close your eyes because you feel not received, see the wounds causing their arms to cross and see me extending my own. When you want to close your eyes to your own sin, see the way I look upon my beloved when I say, you are forgiven, neither do I condemn you. And the last stanza is me again. I don't want to close my eyes again for any reason. I want to see like Bartimaeus. Open my eyes, Lord, that I may see the wonders of your law. So I realize that the reason this ended up being a poustinia for me about humility is because in this moment where I came face to face with my pride and I was so disgusted by what I saw, about how I gave so much of myself and I thought that I did this out of a selfless love, and there was love, but there was an aspect of it that wasn't selfless, because I realized that this was the very humbling moment for me. I realized that when I felt my love wasn't received, I was so angry. And in that anger, I didn't imitate the love of Christ on the cross. Because, I've shared this. I've shared this before with, And I think that's why my favorite stanza of the poem was when you want to close your eyes because you're misunderstood, see the pain barring perception. Like see the pain that's blocking them from understanding. And see him misunderstood on the cross. Yeah. And I've shared this with married couples before who God has given me the great gift, the humbling gift of being able to encounter people who are in such painful marriages, but who are still so committed to marriage, and who so desire to live out their vows, but their spouse doesn't care anymore. Their spouse just something has changed that they no longer want to give of themselves. They no longer want to receive. And so what does the committed spouse do in that? And the image that I've given them, specifically this came to me when I was doing a vigil on Great and Holy Friday one year, and I was praying with the Unity Cross, which is this it's a crucifix with obviously Christ is on the cross. His blood is coming out of his side, and Mary is catching the blood into a chalice. And I'm praying with this crucifix.
Why is it called the Unity Cross?
I don't know.
Oh. So that's the icon? Is this a Byzantine icon or no?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not a Byzantine icon.
Okay.
It's
it's a crucifix with like a corpus.
Yes.
And then Mary's catching Christ's blood in a chalice.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I was holding the crucifix in my hand.
Okay.
I got it at a Theology of the Body retreat. But as I'm praying with this, I'm realizing I was simultaneously praying for one of these married couples that I'm talking about right now. And I'm realizing that as when Christ pours himself out on the cross, he's pouring himself out completely, giving everything he has, and he's giving everything he has, pouring himself out completely for Mary, just as much as he is for John, just as much as he is for Peter, just as much as he is for Judas. So the point being, just as much as he pours himself out for every person who has ever been created and who ever will be created, every person who ever will be in existence, regardless of whether or not that person receives what he's giving, receives in the sense of are receptive to it. Yeah. And so in my anger not even at my anger at not being received, because like I said, it's like one of the sisters maybe looked at me in a way that maybe could have been interpreted as weird. So like maybe I was totally received. It could have all been in my head. There is like, my head is a very crazy place, as you are very familiar with. But sometimes I'll bring things to Father Michael and he just laughs because he's like, that's so absurd. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Don't say that though. I give you
you say it with your face.
I give you kind of a weird, kind of a side
Stop.
look.
Okay. So, anyways, my anger at my perception of not being received is absolutely a failure to imitate Christ giving of himself on the cross, because he gives of himself regardless of whether or not he's received. And he does it in love and without regret. And in those moments, I think we need to seriously consider those moments as things that are confessable. I mean, I don't think that we should be scrupulous about it. And I don't want people to be scrupulous about it. But if you know that you're holding back simply because you're not received, then you should pray about that. Look into that. Like, what is holding you back? And is there a self-focus there? Is there a lack of humility in that you are unwilling to give if you're not being received, or if you're misunderstood? And so that's what my prayer was on this Poustinia was a prayer I asked. I'm actually like looking at my prayer journal as we record this podcast, and and I'm just summarizing, synthesizing what's here. And like I have written here, help me then to imitate your humility, to give of myself fully, regardless whether what I give is received or not. Help me to remember that when I give of myself to anybody in humility and love, I am giving myself to you.
Do you know, sister, does this come out during the Great Fast or not? Do you know?
It does. It comes out the day before the Annunciation.
Okay. So, and it's very fitting then that what you're saying is, because again, one of the things I wanted to mention to you earlier, is this a good time to jump in,
I'm done.
By the way?
That's all I've got. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple
say
things.
Say as much as you want, because it might just be a short episode.
Okay, that's fine. A couple things. First of all, there is a, and I didn't take good enough notes because I don't know exactly what I meant by my scrawl right now. But there's
That's a really weird laugh. I'm sorry. It's kind of like I was laughing like my squirrel might laugh.
Oh yeah. What are you saying about cowboy? I'm just kidding.
That's not what I meant.
I know.
I realized another way that I'm like a squirrel is the pitch of my voice. I went back. I listened to. I don't listen to our episodes. I know you do sometimes. I think to.
I used to when I was more dedicated to correcting myself.
I've never listened to ours because I don't want to hear myself speak because, again, lack of humility. But I had to. Someone had referenced something we said, and I was trying to actually see what we actually said. And so I had to go back and listen to the episode. And as I'm listening to it, I was actually surprised. I was like, I thought I sound much more like a chipmunk than I do on the podcast. But I do a little bit sound chipmunky or squirrely. So
you don't to us. We're always more self-critical, of course.
That was a cowboy. Okay.
All right.
Have you interpreted your scroll?
No, but I'm going to jump in and hope that I get there. At some point, speaking of misplaced confidence. So there's something about patience, because there is we need to understand. I've said this a million times, I know, but we need to understand that God has given us the gift of time in order to change. We are reading. My next topic is going to involve this.
Something about sin.
No, that one's a few years away, probably. Don't get me too distracted. I'm already distracted enough.
You're reading something right now. Your next episode is going to be about this.
Yes. Anyway, it's gone already. That's okay. Welcome to my brain.
Sorry.
But so it might come back. But patience, in other words, the gift of patience, we need to be patient with time, and God gave us the gift of time in order to change. So God gives us, there's a process that he has in mind, a process that he's guiding us in, and we need to have patience and perseverance, especially in the course of the Great Fast. So what that means is that if we are looking at, because that's a very intimidating thing, and I obviously think you're too hard on yourself when you expect to change these things overnight, because most people were even completely unaware that we're doing it. But there's something about when if I want to be able to empty myself and to be charitable and to be generous in a way that does not need to be received well, I do not need a thank you. If I'm gonna do that, that's a big deal. It might not seem like a big deal if we're just saying it this way, but it's a very hard thing to change. So one of the ways to do that is the gift of the church that gives us in our prayer, fasting, and our almsgiving. In other words, we do those three things, especially during the Great Fast. We do them in secret, and our Father who sees in secret will reward us. So if we can get better at doing small things every single day, a little bit of prayer, a little bit of fasting, a little bit of almsgiving in secret and tell nobody, then we'll get better at doing things in secret, and therefore we'll get better at giving gifts to people in secret. This came up, and there's something I want to do. I'm trying not to give it away here or even
pronounce it on the podcast.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Sometimes but there's something that came to my mind. I think it was guided by our Lord that said, "Do this every week." And that's what a good leader does, you know. There was we had one of the stories today that we read you might have read the same thing, the prologue of Oakrid. Was it for the prologue? I think it was about the emperor, for the saint of the day, the emperor carried the cross into the town.
Oh, that might be true. I think I fell asleep during the prologue last night. I was really tired yesterday. It was really hard, and I was sitting, and my head was on my knees, and it was a terrible idea, and I fell asleep during the prologue.
That's probably the best time, because that's not prayer. It's just the same of the day. So it's better to fall asleep in that time than during prayer. That's also why we Byzantines stand up and pray, because we can't fall asleep. It's a lot harder to fall asleep, I should say, while praying if you're standing. This emperor carried the cross into the town. I thought, that's a beautiful thing where the leader does these things themselves. And so I just had this inspiration, like, I'm the pastor of this parish. Why I need to be doing more small things. If I expect my people to serve the parish in this way, I need to do them. I need to do it in a way that's completely hidden. So anyway, but if I want to be able to do that, I need to be able to take the small prayer, fasting, almsgiving, do small things in secret, and I will get better at doing the big things in secret. Whatever I was going to say did not come back to me, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. So just a question for you, sister. That poem was absolutely gorgeous, and it was a true, very, very deep revelation of a conversation you had with Jesus. I'm very glad that you included him in the poem, because I think that is very enlightening, and then can become a prayer that many of us need to pray. So my question for you is, that poem came out of a place of mistake. It came out of a place of sin, of frustration with yourself. And this, I think, is at the heart of what many artists are very melancholic. Many artists, they see the negative in the world and in themselves, and this produces amazing, amazing art. For those of us that are not melancholics, we're not that good at art. It's just not, it doesn't flow for us in the same way. I think because, stand-up comedians usually can go to a very dark place and have very dark things in their life. Any artist tends to have a very dark place that they go to, and that this, for some reason, allows it to produce great art. But how do you, sister, and you don't need to answer this, of course, but how do you make sure that you're also responding? How did I write this out? How do you respond when you notice that you've done well? Like, I hope that after you wrote that poem, or after you realized this about yourself during your poustinia, you saw something about that was beautiful. Like,
absolutely.
What God did was beautiful. He shared something with me, and that is good and beautiful. It is hopeful. It is loving. It is like, what do you do? The poem was a response to. The poem was almost like a confession, right? And we go to confession, and many people, when they talk about the sacrament of confession, the mystery of penance, as we call it, many people talk about, there was the old way, kind of legalistic way of naming my sins and how many, and doing that in confession. I think the problem is that the expectation, when you do that in confession, the expectation was you're also spending a lot of time in praise and thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Some people now say, well, bring your praises and thanksgivings into confession, which I don't agree with. I mean, confession is there for confession, but when do we, and how do you, when you realize something is beautiful, you have responded to God's grace in a really beautiful and extraordinary way, how do you respond to that? The poem was a response to the negative. How do you respond to the positive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that part of the response is simply a gratitude to God. So I liked what you said, because when you asked what do I do, you said that on this poustinia, it was very clear that God did something beautiful. And I think that's the point. God did something beautiful. It's not like, oh, Sister Natalia, look how great you are. You brought this great fruit out of poustinia. No, the only great thing I did on poustinia was that I opened my heart and I was receptive to how Jesus wanted to work. Which
let me interrupt you real quick. What do you think I say when what is the stereotypical things when a priest is when doing marriage prep with a couple, and how much effort does each member put in?
100%.
Exactly. It's not 50-50, right?
Yes.
It's 100%.
It's 100.
Why can't it be the same thing with God?
No.
Why can't it be God's 100% and I'm 100% when something good is produced?
It is. Okay. But I'm saying that the only thing that's required from us is a receptivity and a saying yes, which actually makes it all the more beautiful that this podcast is coming out the day before Annunciation, because this was what Mary did that was so good and so beautiful, was that she was receptive and she said yes. And so I'm not downplaying the importance of that, because God doesn't force us. And so if we aren't receptive and if we don't say yes, then we don't allow the goodness that he wants to happen. And so I'm not downplaying what I did in being receptive and in saying yes. I think that's very good. But ultimately what comes from it is a gratitude to God for even giving me the grace to be receptive. Like, we see in Scripture that we can't even pray without God's help. We can't be grateful without God's help. We can't be receptive without God's help, any of this. Like, we need him for all of it. And so it brings about this spirit of gratitude and a dependence on God and on his help. But the very tangible thing that I want to say that's a response to this, a response to hearing him and to seeing this fruit that he's brought about, is the spirit of gratitude convicts me to action. It's like, I'm so grateful for what God has done. I want to do more. And so here's an example of this. Like when he says, love your neighbor and you will see me. That was part of the poem. And then the end of my prayer at the end of Poustinia was that, help me to remember that when I give of myself to anybody in humility and love, I'm giving myself to you. And so I had another moment after Poustinia. This actually was just 2 days ago, maybe, where I was really short with one of the other nuns in the morning, because I was just like, she annoyed me, basically, is the short of it. And she wasn't intending to be annoying. She actually was trying to be very generous, and I was annoyed. And so I was short with her. And I regretted it. And I went out shopping, and I knew that, when I came home from shopping, like, I wanted to apologize to her, and I wanted to explain to her why I was short and why I already was feeling impatient that morning and things like that. And then I was like, no, that's the thing. This is the thing that I'm trying to fight, and that I'm trying to allow Jesus to fight through me. So instead, what I did was, I bought her a cup of coffee while I was out, and then I brought it back. I put a sticky note on it that just said, forgive me for any impatience this morning. Love you. And that was it. Right. And gave her the coffee. Because then because we can just so easily use an explanation as an excuse. and that's what I would have been doing in trying to explain myself.
Amen.
And so I know it might sound like I'm not answering your question, but what I'm saying is that my response to hearing the Lord is that it moves me, it convicts me to action. Like, I want to apply what he's actually, the goodness that he's giving me, and not to just bury the talents as we read in the Gospels, and to not just like bury the gifts that he's given me. Like, he's enlightened me to this, and that's great, and that's beautiful, and that's a good gift. But it also then puts a responsibility upon me to respond to it.
Yeah, I remembered part of what I was going to say earlier, and thank you for what you just said. Reminded me of that. But that's that you mentioned the coffee. You know, I think the biggest, and this is cliche, but it's true. The best thing you do to apologize is to actually change your behavior, and then there's this idea that, you know, am I going to be patient with myself, and am I going to be patient with the person I'm trying to change for, so that they will hopefully be patient with me and be able to say, instead of me saying, I was patient with you, just get better, do better. And we need to be patient with ourselves. They need to be patient with us as this happens. But that's the most beautiful type is just to say, well, I'm going to start investing right now in that change, so that one day they look back and they might not even notice it. Their life will just be, or their life will become better because I've changed, and then hopefully they'll just notice their life has been better, whether they acknowledge that I was part of it or not. But I do understand the 100% thing, because that's a very tough thing, and I was just kind of throwing it back at you because I wanted to make sure that you were acknowledging that you did respond well, because I think anybody, even me, who hears that would say, yeah, it's really weird saying that I'm contributing 100%. It just sounds weird, but there is something that I'm sure you've had the same thing, sister. A lot of Protestants think that we worship Mary, right? And that's an accusation we often find. And then they come to our Vespers and they hear the priest say, "Most Holy Mother of God, save us," or "Most Holy Theotokos, save us," And it's like, whenever we have Protestants visiting or friends visiting, and I say that, I'm like, oh, I got to explain that, But that phrase, when the priest says in the end of our Vespers, in the dismissal, "Most Holy Theotokos," or "Most Holy Mother of God, save us." There's obviously various meanings there that I won't go into all of them, but one of them is that we know that Mary is not the Messiah. Like, that's a given. No one's questioning that. So the Protestant Reformation did not happen in the East like it happened in the West. It was never questioned, our devotion to the Mother of God, in the same way it was in the West. We never had Protestants denying our devotion to the Mother of God. So we can say, "Most Holy Mother of God, save us," and nowadays we get kind of weirded out by that, but we never took it out of our liturgy because it was never really questioned. Nobody is thinking that Mary is the Messiah. Nobody thinks that Mary is the anointed one, that she's actually the one who by her prayers, by any other thing, saved our souls. Nobody thinks that in the East, or they shouldn't, And so we can say that because it's a given that we don't mean that she is the Messiah. We mean by her prayers, by her fiat, by the Annunciation, by the fact that Jesus chose to come into the world as a man through her. So then we can say, "Save us," namely, we are saved through you because you are the mother of the Savior, the mother of God. But we can also ask you to save us through your intercession, and these are the things that we mean. So are we going to get to the point? I think we've switched back and forth in this pendulum in our generations, in our society. Are we getting to the point where I can say, if somebody says to me, and maybe this shows how we should grow in holiness and testimony to the world. Someone can say to me, "Great job on that homily," and I can just say, "Thank you." And somebody else to them says, "But don't priests believe that the Holy Spirit speaks through them?" And the person can say, "Oh no, it's a given that Father Michael knows the Holy Spirit. It's a given that he says that was Jesus 100%. That was Jesus 100%, and the Holy Spirit 100%. But he's still saying thank you because it was also him 100%. And then, or the other way around, if somebody says, "Oh, Father, man, the Holy Spirit did such an amazing homily through you today," right? And I go, "Yeah," And then they say, "But he's the one who said it. Why are you dismissing him?" I'm not dismissing. He knows that he said it. But in other words, they're both a given, and if we can be eloquent in that way, so there is something beautiful about I know with you, sister, especially, but with anybody who, when we overemphasize it was God doing it, even the grace to turn to him, the grace to be alive, the beginning of our being, the end of our being, everything is Jesus Christ, everything is the Creator, everything is the Holy Spirit. If that we think that way, but I think there is, since we're human, since we're sacramental beings, we need the physical, tangible things, in other words, and we might have some days where we need to say, you know what, I'm tagging out too much. I'm putting too much on Jesus. I'm not responding to the work he actually wants me to do, to be his hands and voice in the world. And in those moments, we need to emphasize our own labors and how our own work is a conduit of Jesus Christ. And then there are other days when we start feeling too prideful and we start thinking, man, look what an amazing job I've done. And at that point, we need to say, pause. Yes, it's 100% you, but you need to focus today on the 100% that is Jesus, because you're getting a little bit too arrogant about it, So anyway, I know that sounds kind of cliche and hippie, but I think that there's that balance is important for us and for people to hear, that there is praise and thanksgiving at the same time that there's conviction.
I think you're right, and I'm glad that you had that we had that discussion. Because I think, like, in spiritual direction, I don't think I would have given all of that context of, like, it wasn't me, it was Jesus. It was like,
right. Yep. Very good example.
But the reason I give it here is because I think even just subconsciously, I try to respond to the trends in society.
Yep.
And the society's trend is, like, be a self-made man, be self-reliant, and so.
That's so funny, because I see the opposite.
Oh.
Well, no, I see a lot of self-hatred and shame and scrupulosity. Oh,
sure. Yeah, no, I think I agree. But I mean in the sense of like parents are raising their kids to be so proud of what they're doing and proud of their intelligence and to own it and to just, like, emphasize, you're so smart, you're so good at this, you're so good at that, and, like, give trophies to everyone. And like, you looked at the soccer field and you get a trophy. And so anyways.
See, and that's funny, because I think what we're identifying here is a very polarized world where we're not finding the middle. Because in my mind, participation trophies are to keep the kids from feeling bad about themselves. Mm-hmm. It's not about, look what you did. It's look, I don't want you to be too scrupulous. I don't want you to be sad about it, So you get one anyway. So it's just funny that we're seeing these things different ways. But I think that's because it's polarized, Mm-hmm. But also I think that we're both responding to the opposite of what we are. So I'm saying I'm more aware of scrupulosity because I don't have a scrupulous bone in my body, and you have a lot of scrupulous bones, even the little tiniest one in your ear. Just kidding. Anyways.
That's amazing. Should we move on to prayer intentions?
Yes, please.
Okay. I have 2 intentions. One is tomorrow, when this is released. Tomorrow is my brother's birthday, so please pray for Brian, my brother. He's going to be 32 because I'm going to be 30. That's crazy. Wow. Anyways.
You're my sister's age. I never realized that. I guess I did. I probably said it, but yeah, you're my sister's age. Cool.
So anyways, pray for Brian, my brother, that he has a good and holy birthday. And secondly, I think it's a great thing for our listeners. Like, part of what we desire in our podcast is to build community and for people to know that they're not alone. And so please pray for my friend Beth, not the Beth who works for a podcast, but a different Beth. I won't give a last name because I don't know if she'd want it, but her family is just in a very beautiful but also very painful situation right now. She's one of our listeners. And so please pray for fellow listener Beth and her family. And yeah.
Amen.
Brian and Beth.
Well, I will ask you, dear listeners, to please pray for a man. So every Thursday morning, we do it's called a prayer walk, where we just, Father Nathan and I, dress in our cassocks, and we get a few parishioners, and we walked on the street cleaning up trash, and we pray. So we just walked on the street and we pray and we clean up trash. And so today there were 4 of us, and we decided to drive down to Ventura Boulevard instead of walking just through the neighborhoods. We drove down the Ventura Boulevard and it was beautiful. We got a lot more thank yous. We got a lot more honking and waving and things like this, because we're in our cassocks, so it looks kind of weird too. But this one guy, I said, you know what? I thought it'd be a good witness to the society to say, hey, we have these trash bags. I don't want them put back in my car because they're like dripping junk from the street, you know. So I said, let's ask a business owner if we can just use their trash can. So we did. And so this guy was like, oh, yeah, of course. I'm going to say his name is Jim. I don't want to give his real name. But he says his name. She goes, oh, yeah, of course. So he takes the bags and he runs to the trash can and he comes back weeping. And he just says, and he fist bumps me because, of course, we're wearing masks and we can't shake hands. And I'm sure he wanted to give me a hug. And he told me this whole story about these horrible, and he's weeping about these horrible things going on in his life and for years and stuff. And
Whoa.
And then he just said, please pray for me, pray for me, pray for me. And I was like, this is why we do this. This is why we try to be a witness to the world and clean up trash on the street. And we gave him an opportunity to help us out. And he's just was so honored about that. He wanted to come back. He didn't have his purse. I gave him a blessing. We prayed for him. And he talked about not being able to go to church for years. And anyway, he with this whole thing, it was really, really beautiful. To just pray for this guy that we'll call Jim, a business owner who was begging for prayers today and was very, very struck just by the presence of a priest and two priests walking down the street. And so priests, be an example, be obvious. Yeah. Amen.
So beautiful.
All right.
Yeah.
Blessing.
Yes, please.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord send forth all of you into this world with humility. May you always pray to see your own sins, and may you have both thanksgiving and conviction when you see them. May you always see Christ as the one who gives hope and the one who wants to forgive, the one who wants to heal. May you look at Christ first and see him as the healer and the forgiver before you even look at your own wounds and your own sins, that you may never look at your own wounds and sins with shame, but rather as opportunities for hope and for forgiveness. And may you see time as a gift. May you be patient with yourself and with God and with others. And may you receive everything from God and respond in a way that allows him to save your soul. May the Lord bless you in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Love you. Love you,
Welcome.
listeners.
Love you too.
Thanks for letting me mother.